Hello, everyone. Welcome to TSAM Digital. My name is Anna, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Matt Grinnell. He's the head of product for investment compliance at Linedata. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here, Matt. So before we get started today, I wanted to ask you, would you like to say a couple of words about yourself and about Linedata?
Thank you, Anna. I've worked in investment compliance for over 20 years. Back then, I worked at a couple of large asset managers where compliance was a lesser known function. Things certainly have changed. These days, even those at the C-suite level ask about the performance of the compliance group. Today, I work at Linedata. We are a global provider of software and solutions with expertise in all segments of asset management, institutional, retail, wealth, and alternatives. And we have 6 of the 10 largest global firms using our products. And within a firm, we cover from the front to back office. Of course, that includes investment compliance, which we'll talk about today. And that's really all about monitoring compliance of the investment guidelines, if it's an institutional account, and the regulations, if it's a retail product, such as a mutual fund or a UCITS. And really, we'll focus on 3 key areas. First, we'll talk a little bit about how investment compliance is much more than just maintaining the status quo. Next, we'll take a look at the regulatory agenda and what's going on there. And then I'll finish up with a few comments about what keeps me and other compliance professionals up at night.
So, Matt, my first question for you is, why is investment compliance evolving faster today?
Compliance used to be a well-defined path for firms to follow, sort of like a 2-lane highway with guardrails. You knew where you were going and you didn't stray far from that path. However, today it resembles something more like an 8-lane highway that's under construction. And the compliance group has become more of a centralized control function. So when the firm identifies a new risk, they call upon compliance to add something to their monitoring responsibilities. And this is an ever-increasing list of things to do. Unfortunately, the investment in infrastructure often lags behind the need for compliance. So in the short term, they sometimes rely on spreadsheets or an existing system that may be too rigid and not very extensible. Now, using the wrong system is like trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. You can make it work, but it's bound to break. And I know of an investment compliance team that was called upon at a firm to start monitoring foreign holding thresholds. And they built a very sophisticated spreadsheet with columns and grids and tabs. And it did work, but over time they realized that someone had overwrote one of the formulas. And by the time they detected it, they realized they had missed a foreign filing deadline. So in hindsight, that firm agreed that maybe spreadsheets weren't the best option in this instance. To sum things up, I would say compliance has become more dynamic. It's the needs for tools and solutions in this space.
So, from Chief Compliance Officer to CEO, why is there more attention on regulators today?
I would say it's the ramp up in volume of activities related to the influence campaign that the regulators are using to accomplish their agenda. I'll use the SEC as an example, but similar things are going on with all major jurisdictions. The SEC has 3 main levers they can pull to influence the market. They have exams, they have rulemaking, and they have enforcement. And it's really the last 2 that they've been leaning on heavily to accomplish their agenda. Just in the first quarter of this year, they issued 4,000 pages of new regulations. And year to date, they've doled out $6.4 billion on fines related to 700 investigations. And those are the types of numbers that everyone pays attention to, and no asset manager wants to be associated with. And that's really at the crux of what they're trying to do with their current initiative. And as I said before, the SEC isn't really an outlier among other regulators. You would see similar things going on around the world.
So, Matt, finally, what keeps you and other investment compliance technicians up at night?
I'd say at the top of this list is ESG investing. It's one of the fastest growing areas for new products, and it's brought about a cultural shift in investment thinking. But with all the attention it's been getting comes a lot of friction. At a high level, it's the question of whether climate change is real or not. Or should asset managers be allowed to consider ESG characteristics? Or how do you define ESG strategies to your investors? Lastly, if you're an asset manager, how do you provide evidence that you're walking the talk to the investors, and to the regulators. The last one is really where compliance steps in with the controls and a safety net. But really, the keys to success are having the right data and the right investment compliance system. And it's definitely an area where you don't want to have any friction. It's just too risky. But there are challenges to overcome. ESG data is an evolving space. There's no one-stop shopping. There's no superstore of data. So an asset manager needs to deal with multiple vendors to get all the data they need to cover all of their positions. And they need an investment compliance system that thrives on variability that comes with dealing with multiple vendors. There's also the challenge of the lack of global regulatory standards for ESG investing. So an asset manager that does business in multiple regions, they need an investment compliance system that doesn't follow a cookie cutter approach, really one that thrives on variability. Because what is meant by compliance today is going to be redefined over and over again as circumstances change. Now, just to wrap things up, here are 3 takeaways from what I've said today. First of all, investment compliance has become much more dynamic today, and it needs tools that are more flexible and extensible. Regulatory authorities are going to continue to issue more regulations and enforce the old ones. And lastly, ESG investing is one, if not the biggest challenge for investment compliance teams in the short term. They will need a system that can easily handle all the new data and one that really thrives on variability.
Matt, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your insight. It's been really lovely having you here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Anna. It's been a pleasure being here today, and enjoy the rest of your day.